Hey guys, welcome back to Fishyaker.com. I'm Toast. I'm joined again by my good buddy Paul Hansen. We're going to talk a little about a trend that's been getting pretty common on the internet, shaming people for harvesting fish. Hey Paul, welcome back to Fishyaker. This is like the third time we've had you on now?
Yeah, third or fourth.
Third or fourth or something.
Becoming a regular deal.
Yeah, it was cool, dude. You got some really good feedback with both of us doing this together. I guess we kind of have, I don't know, charisma, bounce stuff off each other. Anyway, this actually came up because, the concept of shaming people. I mean, obviously there's been some other drama going on because of, cheating and kayak fishing. But this isn't kayak fishing. This is just fishing in general. Good,
Yeah.
Food for thought. People go fishing. They post up on Facebook pictures of them holding big, huge bass or whatever it is on their driveway with their boat or their kayak next to them, and all of a sudden people that don't even necessarily know them pile on them and say, "Hey, you should have put that fish back." And I thought it would be a good conversation piece. I'm not saying I really agree or disagree. It's case by case. It really depends on what you're fishing for and where you're fishing.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. We've been seeing this more and more. And when I grew up, everybody, would go out with the family and grandpa and grandma, and then everybody would have a big stringer of walleyes, and you used to see those pictures with everybody lined up on the dock with, 300 crappies.
Yep.
For a one-day adventure for a whole flipping family. And things have changed. The fisheries departments, the DNRs and stuff like that. Conservation has changed the thought process on that, John. But I think, it's almost gotten too extreme.
Right.
And myself, from years of guiding trout, I've never taken one trout ever, period. And I just never did. The one reason I didn't do it was that I didn't want to drag around the river a fish all day. I wanted, just fish all day long, and I don't want to be dragging something around. If I wanted something, I'd stop by the store, maybe grab a salmon or, what have you. But I really didn't see a need to whack something.
Right.
But now what we're seeing is that, like you said, we're seeing the shaming going on. Is it wrong to take one fish? I mean, we ice fish up here in Minnesota, and I love fresh caught crappies.
Right.
And I love walleyes. Is it wrong? Heck no. If everybody takes one, we're not going to see much of an issue. But if everybody starts taking a limit every time they go out, by all means, we're going to have an issue. And we're looking at, if you look up at, if everybody's watching this, punch in Lake Mille Lacs, Minnesota. It's now to a catch and release walleye fishery only.
Right.
It's the first time in the entire history of it, because you've got guides filling limits with their clients. You've got launches going out every night with these huge barges filling up. And then the weekend guides like you and I and stuff like that going out and taking a limit. Plus you have the Native American Reserve up in northern Minnesota, and they've got an allotment they can do from spearing and gill netting as well. And I'm not going to touch that one because that can be a real touchy subject.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's anything wrong with taking one fish. And people just have gotten on this soapbox where they think they're better than the rest of everybody. And if one person takes a fish, they're going to bash them on the internet. It's not cool. I don't think it's a cool way to handle things. Now, John, here's a really good example. Now, the fish that I usually catch are, large. And the ones you catch, well, not so much.
Okay.
But with that said, if you had a pickle pail filled with fish that were this size, I would probably come over there and thump you over the head with a stick, because you're killing off the future. I mean, what do you think about this?
Hey, to me, you're talking to a guy that grew up saltwater fishing
Yep.
and then went to freshwater. I mean, I've grown up fresh and salt, but to me, I'm not a big person, a big fan of eating freshwater fish. I'd rather eat saltwater. I mean, I'd die for a well-prepared black and red fish or flounder, all right? But I think it's really more, instead of just size of the fish, it's regional. For instance, I fish the Susquehanna, obviously, and honestly, it's an impaired fishery. You have one of the greatest river smallmouth fisheries in the world. But there's intersex disease. There's male bass with eggs in them. There's a black spotches. No one really seems to know what it is. There's mine runoff. There is hormonal runoff from agriculture. The fishery is pretty rough. So harvesting just one smallmouth really could do some damage, honestly. It's compared to, say, maybe the Great Lakes, certain other areas where there's a more prolific fishery. So in addition to just saying harvesting one fish, it depends on where you are. I mean, for instance, I'm from down south where you have a much longer growing season for the fish. Your fish are going to reproduce more often. Their reproduction rates may be more successful depending on what type of, if they're bluegills that are picking off the nests or other animals that are picking off the smaller fish. But you have some fisheries where one fish could make a difference. You have other fisheries where there's an overpopulation and you might need to take some fish out to keep the overall size from being overpopulated and stunted.
Sure.
So really, when we see somebody posting up on Facebook, they harvested a fish and they're fishing in, say, Texas or Florida or somewhere like that, where it could be a lake that's just a glut of fish, you can't compare that to somewhere, say, like the Susquehanna, or you take one fish out, that could mess up the population of a region of the river.
Right. We had a situation on the Mississippi. It's happened a couple times. We have a nuclear plant. And what's happened is that they've had to do an auto shutdown. And with that, in the wintertime, our discharge temperatures are about 40 degrees. And so all these young fish that are up by the discharge portion of the nuclear plant, all of a sudden that warm water is done, and now they're injecting cold water, which is a flash kill. And we see 1,000+ fish of very small sizes. You'll see some rough fish as well in that mix. But if we had people continually taking, then that fishery will suffer. Now, I'll pull into the morning for a guide trip, and I'll see people down on the riverbanks, and they'll take their limits. And I see that in the evenings. People are building fires on the riverbank, and they're going to whack everything they catch. But when you have a conservation individual, like let's say you and I, or people we know, and they do catch one fish and they decide to harvest it, it's not worth beating somebody up. If you really want to do it, go down to the riverbank or go down to the lake when there's a guy down there with a family of 6 whacking everything they catch. Now, would you do that? No, because everybody feels pretty confident sitting on the internet with a bag of chips and a bottle of beer in their underwear, bashing somebody for something that they don't think is right.
Keyboard anglers.
Absolutely. And the internet has done good things and bad things for fishing. The good thing is it's educated. The bad thing is it's educated. But I don't think taking one fish, if you take one fish a year, big deal. It's not that bad. And I would like to see somebody chime in on this outside of you and I, since we're kind of in a neutral ground here, to give us their explanation.
Yeah.
I mean, what if you fall hooked? What if that fish is gut hooked? You just let it go?
Yeah, it's not going to survive.
Yeah, it isn't going to live.
But if you see somebody that catches an 8-pound bass and is foul hooked or gut hooked, and it could have died just because they post a picture of it on Facebook, you don't know the reason why it was harvested. You see a big fish and everybody piles on. And don't get me wrong, I rarely, if ever, harvest fish. Rarely. But he that lives in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. And
True.
judge not lest ye be judged. So my thing is, unless you know where that person's fishing and know that that's an impaired fishery and know that it's really harming that location, it's hard to say. Maybe they're fishing from an area where they're actually promoting the harvesting of fish to have a better fish population and the size of the fish in that area. So unless you know that person or know where they're fishing, it's not always fair to judge because every situation is different.
I mean, how many times have we gone to the riverbanks and you see carp laying on the riverbanks dead?
Yeah.
All right. So what is good and what is bad? I see that all the time.
You see the bass guys in some places where they'll catch bowfin and they'll chuck the bowfin up on the shore because bowfin are a menace fish to the bass.
Yeah.
But you got other guys that love to catch bowfin. A lot of my friends never even seen one.
Yeah.
But they'd be amazed, you get 32-inch bowfin sitting up on the shoreline.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I thought it was something interesting to talk about. I mean, it all comes back, like I said, be careful who you judge because nobody's perfect. But it really does depend on where you're fishing, the regulations. In some places, they may be promoting active harvesting of fish to take care of the fish population. But yeah, I mean, here's the thing too. If you're harvesting a 10-pound fish, what is the future potential for additional, for that fish to spawn compared to, like you said, a smaller fish is going to have multiple generations it's going to produce.
True. And it goes to that. Put the females back. Educate yourself so you know what a female species looks like of that fish.
Right.
Release them. It's kind of like hunting. We were out turkey hunting this past weekend. We're not going to shoot the hens, are we? Heck no. We're going to go get the toms.
Yeah.
So, if you harvest 1 or 2 fish a year, so be it. But you're right. People shouldn't be bashing and doing all that because it just leads down to many bad feelings. And then you get the internet wars, and the testosterone begins to flow like a fountain at Caesar's Palace.
Now, that being said, if you know the person is fishing in somewhere where they shouldn't be fishing and harvesting fish, to me, honestly, that's fair game.
Yeah.
If you know the backstory on the fish. But if somebody you don't even know from Adam that lives 8 states away, don't. But I mean, if you know they're fishing in an area that has an issue or if the fish is out of season, that honestly, knock yourself out. That's my feeling. But I mean, just realize, just know the backstory and, go there. If you want to go into battle, be armed and know how to fight, because the person might have a very good response and say why they did it, or they could have foul hooked a fish. You don't know.
Sure. No, I totally agree with you. And I think people will look at that and go, yeah, you're right. Maybe I was too harsh if I was the internet commando policing photos. And they'll get an understanding of that. And, unfortunately, I don't know, there's a lot of judgment being passed on on these internet blogs and things like that. And everybody wants to be a professional and so on. But it has gotten out of hand, and I agree with you. And we've talked about this a couple of times, and it kind of adds into that list of other things that the internet has created demons of destruction of the brotherhood per se.
Right. Well, anyway, feel free, everybody, to chime in down below on the video, or if you're seeing this on Facebook, chime in, let us know your thoughts. Like I say, there's 3 sides to every story, yours, mine, and the truth. So no matter what your opinion is on it, there's going to be people that disagree, and somewhere out there are some fish biologists that probably knows it better than any of us. So anyway, everybody chime in down below. Paul, thanks for coming on again. Everybody, as always, please be sure to subscribe to Fishyaker on YouTube, like us on Facebook. We'll catch you on the water.
Fishyaker.com, the original kayak rigging video series.